Hey everybody, you are listening to Crossroads on 91.7 FM WHUS here on the campus of UConn in Stores, Connecticut. I am the Reverend Brian Blair and I'm here with my fantastic guest today, Avery Lenhart. How are you today, Avery?
I'm fine, thanks.
Avery's joining us from the No Freeze shelter, the homeless shelter here in the area, and we're going to talk about the wonderful work she does in a minute. But first, a few announcements. First of all, if you're around Wednesday night and you're in the area and you'd like to try out a particular kind of prayer service we call Even Song, it's all sung, it's evening prayer. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be at St. Mark's Episcopal Chapel here on North Eagleville Road on the campus of UConn. Come on by Wednesday evening. And check our website for all the wonderful things that we're doing. I want to give one plug for one of the wonderful things that we're doing with the Wyndham Area Interfaith Ministry. They have a great event coming up this Sunday where people do a walkathon to raise money for people who may run out of heat during the wintertime. So come participate in the Walk for Warmth at WAME this Sunday. Also, if you get there early enough, there is an interfaith Thanksgiving service that everyone can participate in. So that's the Walk for Warmth. Now that's all my announcements. Avery, do you have anything you'd like to share that's going on?
Yes, the first thing is that something that will help the people in need in this region a great deal. Bruce John is partnered with the Lions Club in Willimantic, and they are holding a boot drive right now, and they're trying to gather as many boots as they can for people who are otherwise unable to buy them for themselves. And then the only other thing is there's one of our biggest fundraisers of the year is the Bruce John event in January. It's called Hug a Hippie, and it's a dance and it's a lot of fun, and it benefits the No Free Shelter. It'll be held January 25th. At the Elks Club on Pleasant Street. And you can watch our Facebook page for more information. And if you want information about the boot drive, I would suggest looking on the Lions Club Facebook page.
Hug a Hippie in January.
Yes.
That's fantastic. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, let's get into it. We're so glad that you're here. I really wanted you to come on the show so you can tell us all about what happens at the No Free Shelter. I think it's a great thing for our community that we do it, and I think it's fantastic that you are the one who runs it. How about, if you don't mind, can you just tell us a bit about the No Free Shelter?
Sure. We're a homeless shelter for people who are experiencing housing crisis at the moment. We have 30 beds. We're a nonprofit organization. We've been in business for since about 2003. It was started as a grassroots organization. A group of people were very concerned. Somebody had died outdoors at night on a very cold night in the community, and a group of people got together and decided to do something about this. And so they created the No Free Shelter. We're open from November 1st until April 30th every year. And we're a place where people can come and be safe and warm and greeted with compassion and care and get some help and get help getting connected to housing services.
Well, that's a great move into a different question. Do you provide things like food?
We don't provide food. We are really just open at night. We open our doors at 7:30 p.m. We close them at 8:30 in the morning. But we find that we want people to be connected to lots of other services and organizations in the community, because we feel that that is a way for people to reconnect to what they need for to get it back into housing and to no longer be homeless. So we really encourage people to go use the soup kitchens and the food pantries, but also connect to behavioral health or physical health services or whatever it is that they need, housing services and that sort of thing.
Well, what's your role at the No Free Shelter?
So I'm the executive director. I took on this job in June of this year. Prior to that,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you. Prior to that, I was the shelter manager for, I think, about 6 years. And I really just loved working there and working with these folks and being a part of this very integrated community. So it's a really good thing for me. It was a natural progression when the previous director, Lee Duffy, left for me to take over, fill her shoes.
You use the phrase, it was a good thing for you, it was a natural progression. What about in the course of your life? How did you wind up here?
So I had a career in Montessori education, which I loved. I loved working with children. I loved working with families. I loved being part of a community. And Montessori is very focused on community. So that was something that was, a really good fit for me. And then when I was faced with paying for my daughter's education, I started looking for some additional work. And I had been volunteering at the No Freeze. And so I really liked volunteering. And at that time, the shelter manager position was part-time and seasonal. And I said, well, okay, during the winter months, I can work there at night and work as a Montessori educator during the day. And so I took that job, and I loved it. And I loved it so much that I said, if you ever have a way for me to come on full-time and year-round, I would do it. And so fortunately, the board and Lee together found a way to make that happen about 3 years ago. And it's been very exciting for me ever since.
You said you're a single mother raising children. They need to go off to school.
Yes.
And so you made a conscious decision to take on a second job. How many hours a week were you working?
I think about 55 hours a week. And I did it because my youngest daughter had her heart set on this rather expensive school in Massachusetts. And I knew that this was the best school for her. And I knew because I was her teacher for many years. She went to Montessori school with me. And I knew her style of learning, and this college has a kind of alternative way of thinking about college. It's Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts. And I knew that it was the best fit for her. So I just wanted to think very clearly about what I could do to make that happen for her. And we, of course, received a very generous financial aid package. But she went there, and she loved it, and she is now... she graduated and she's working in her field. So,
well, you are a force to be reckoned with. That is not common, and I think that's incredible. So this community's blessed to have you be part of it. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So you're enjoying your new position as what did you say? The title is the executive director?
Yes.
And you moved into it and everything's going well?
Yes, except we did just learn that we have to relocate. So this is kind of a big project that I'm taking on right now, and to me it's very exciting to do it. But I'm also still learning my job, so it's a little daunting sometimes.
Well, that I wanted to get to this later, but it feels like it fits right now. How do you get support for the agency? And then if you're going to be moving, obviously you're going to need to consider all the logistics and the funding and all that. How does your agency operate? How is it funded?
We are primarily funded through private donations. I think about 87% of our budget annually is funded by people writing checks. Is very, very common. PayPal.
Did everybody out there hear that? People write checks to the homeless shelter.
I will give the information later in the program.
Okay, great.
About how you can help support the No Freeze. We also really rely on volunteers. We rely on donations. So we have volunteers who come at night to help us at the shelter, and that fills a role for us that we would otherwise have to pay a staff person, which we maybe wouldn't be able to do. So that's very helpful.
Could I ask you about the volunteers? Because we're here on the campus of UConn in their radio booth. Aren't there organizations here at UConn which help?
Yes, the biggest help, if anybody on campus wants to volunteer, is they can go through the community outreach program, and they're fantastic. They come 4 nights a week, I believe.
Wow.
And they send a couple of volunteers, and the students are terrific. We also get volunteers from Eastern. They come on the alternate nights that UConn.
But they're not as good as the UConn students, right?
Well.
No, I can't.
I am not going to play favorites.
No, of course not. So you get a lot of volunteers from the local universities, right? And then you said 87% of your funding comes from generous donations from people. Private donations, right?
Yeah.
What about the other 13%?
So we do get some help from faith-based organizations. Churches often help us and give regularly. We also have some funding from small foundations. Liberty Bank is one, and a few other small foundations. The names are going to escape me right in this moment, but. We get money from the Women and Girls Fund and things like that. So there are several small foundations that help us out, and we do not receive any state or federal funds.
I'm glad you operate. I'm glad you're able to stay open and operate. I'm grateful for all those people and organizations who help make that a reality. I hope your move goes well. I want to move into the other part of our show, which is we always ask our guests about how their faith life intersects with their everyday life. So if you don't mind, how would you describe yourself as a person of faith?
So I am a Christian, and I came to the faith in about 2011. I had not been a believer prior to that. I was volunteering at the shelter, and I was having a period in my life that I was struggling in a lot of ways. And I met someone who was also volunteering at the shelter, and he started talking to me about all kinds of things that were related to the universe. And I was really intrigued and really interested about different ways you can be and practice, and how to kind of change your heart and think more outside yourself and less inwardly, and stop focusing on your need and focus on positive things in your life and all kinds of things. And after about 2 weeks of this conversation, that it was really mind-boggling to me. And he said to me one day, I'm talking about God. And I was, in the moment, I said I was vexed, and at the same time grateful, and realized that all of the things that I had thought about God and faith and Christianity prior to that moment were wrong, and that I had invented a whole lot of things in my head. And so that sort of took me down this path where I couldn't deny it. I couldn't deny God or Christ anymore, because I said, this is true. I can't know that this is the truth and turn around and walk away.
Oh, wow.
So I became a Christian and a believer, and I practice my faith daily, and I believe that God is what led me to want to be at the shelter, and He has given me a servant's heart, and I'm so grateful for that, because it makes my life so easy to know this.
So in our society, even today, which certainly by all the surveys that are done and people who look into this kind of thing, we have fewer and fewer people of faith generally, and certainly fewer people who define themselves as Christian and who would be part of any kind of what we might call an organized religion. It's certainly not typical for someone to come to new faith practice. So, do you feel like this is a new exciting thing for you?
Very, very. And I kind of feel like this is what's been missing from my life. For a long time, I realize I can point to times in my prior life where I realized that God was there and was helping me. But I wasn't aware, and I was busy rejecting him. So having this strength of God and Christ in my life is what helps me to be able to do hard work and do things that are sometimes very challenging. And that's why the shelter is so important for me, because it's a place where I can serve God and Christ through my work, and I can help people, and also when things get difficult and stressful, I have this strength that doesn't come from inside me, so I'm very lucky.
You bring up a great question. Maybe you've got a story. Can you think of a time when things were a bit overwhelming at the shelter, or just the fact that the shelter itself can be a challenging experience where your faith kind of pulled you through?
So that happens, I think, every day at the shelter. But I have some stories. I have a great story about, so one of the things that we do is we help people get into housing. And there are a number of resources that we can tap into. We work with a number of other agencies in eastern Connecticut who are part of the homeless response system. And so what we do is when we have guests at the shelter, we're immediately trying to figure out how they can get into housing and how they can get connected so that they're not experiencing homelessness for a long time. We had a woman that came to us one year, and she had been in a crisis. She had been in a job where she was a home companion, where she lived with her client, and he had a fall, and he was going into nursing care, and it was long term. And at the same time, right around the time that happened, she had a baby. And so she was struggling with this change in her life where she was going to have to leave this home, and at the same time she was a new single mother. And she didn't have any outside resources to help her. And unfortunately, she had a breakdown, and she was asked to leave the home, and DCF came and took custody of her child. And she came to us, and she was obviously a mess, and she just needed a lot of help. And so she came into the shelter. We helped her out. We let her stay there. We helped her get connected to whatever resources she needed. And she was just really great, because once she was in the shelter and she was around people who were compassionate and understanding, and nobody was pointing a finger at her because she had lost her child, because she had had a breakdown, because she had lost her job, all of those things disappeared for her, and we were able to focus her on getting her back into housing. She immediately got a job in town. It was a very low-paying job, but we connected her to a housing resource called Rapid Rehousing, and that is a program that has her, it pays her security deposit, and it will pay for 1 or 2 months rent and give her some budgeting help and things like that, and then get her back into an apartment and paying successfully on her own. Well, she did this program, she got into an apartment, and a couple of months ago she regained custody of her little boy. And so she's a huge success story. She's still working at that job. She's very, very careful with her money, and she's doing great. And I think that was just one of those, wonderful opportunities for her, that we were able to get her steered into the right help and what she needed. And she did a lot of great work on her own. But I think the space that we gave her, the non-judgment, the understanding, and the compassion was what really helped her to be able to move forward.
And you feel like your ability to work with people in that way is an expression or an outgrowth of your faith?
Yes.
Great.
How could it not be?
You bring up one particular client. What kinds of clients, what kinds of people walk through the door typically?
So, first of all, we are an adults-only shelter, so nobody under the age of 18 can come to us, and if anybody is experiencing a housing crisis and need help, or you think you might need shelter, please call 211. That's the door into any shelter in the state of Connecticut right now. We see about 72% men right now and 28% women. The percentage of women is going up slightly every year. I'm not quite sure why. But I think it has to do with an awareness of kind of trafficking conditions and things like that. A lot of women are becoming more and more educated about what's acceptable and what's not for a living situation. And so sometimes people will see that the shelter is a better alternative to an unsafe housing situation. Sorry, you asked about our population.
Yeah.
We have, obviously we have people who are struggling with all kinds of issues. Housing is just one of them. A lot of times we have people who are addicted or who are experiencing mental health or behavioral health issues. We have people we've had elderly people, we've had people with physical limitations. And so we see everybody. And everybody's story is different and unique. Sometimes we just have people who are experiencing a breakup and they have no place to go, or have lost their job, car breaks down, something like that. So we do what we can, and a lot of times we try to divert people away from shelter so that they don't ever have to come in. We want people to see themselves as being housed, and a lot of times what we do is when they come into us, we sit down and work creatively with them about what they might do instead of coming to shelter and how we could help them with that. So we do a lot of work along that too.
So you're not inhospitable, you want people to have safe, secure, healthy, happy lives,
Yes.
right? You want them to be in housing.
Right.
When you are doing your job, do you encounter any or a lot of the not in my backyard-ism that can happen around homeless shelters and issues with this?
It can happen anywhere, and there will always be people who say, I don't want this near me. But I will tell you that the community, Willimantic and the surrounding region, the towns are very, very supportive. And our community is very supportive when we've had to go before zoning or anything like that to talk with them about where we can be in Willimantic. We get nothing but positive comments and help from people. So, and I didn't mention before in our funding sources is that the towns in this area each give a contribution to the shelter because they recognize that we may be taking folks who are in need from their areas too.
So it's that it's kind of enlightened personal self-interest going on, where it's like if my community, I want my community to be healthy so I could be happy and healthy. I may have particular views or ideas about homelessness and these kinds of conditions, but whatever my views are, I'd better handle it or it becomes my problem?
Yeah, I think so. And I would say the Willimantic community is so interesting because it's very diverse and we have all kinds of different populations there. And yet, when it comes to helping anybody or doing what they can, we have amazingly supportive people in our community.
Great.
And I have to say that my board, the board for the No Freeze Shelter is amazingly supportive, and they're a group of local volunteers that really do a lot of work to help me in my job and help keep the shelter going. So.
Now, for like a board of directors, you have people rotating on and off the board on a regular basis, annually, whatever the case may be, and you would always therefore be looking for people in the community who might feel a sense of wanting to help out with something like this, right? So they can contact you to learn more and
Yes.
maybe see if they're suitable to help out by being on the board of directors?
Yes, we are looking for members of our board, and because we have an upcoming relocation, we would really love to have somebody on the board who knows anything about buildings.
Oh, yeah, sure. Do you find, how easy is it for you to develop partnerships and coalitions in the area?
Well, we're part of the, what we call, there's a statewide system called the CAN system, the Coordinated Access Network. And that is a remarkable system that's statewide that is dedicated to streamlining the process of somebody going from homeless to housed. So the first thing is, that, as I mentioned before, 211, you call 211, and that starts you on the path to getting services. The first thing that will happen is what we call a 211 intake, in which you would be put into the Homeless Management Information System, which is the statewide database for people who are experiencing homelessness. After that, there's shelter, and if we find that we can help you get somewhere, we would help you get somewhere. So if our shelter is somehow not suitable for you, we would help you get to another place. But we also work with mental health, addiction services, housing providers, physical health providers, and they all come to the table. We have regular meetings with a variety of providers across the eastern Connecticut we do this monthly and even every other week. And we do this in an effort to help the people who are experiencing homelessness move into housing in the best way possible. So some meetings are around looking at our process and making sure that we're tweaking issues and making sure that needs are getting met in a timely manner. Other meetings are specifically about the clients in our region and how we can move them into housing.
Well, so it's a bit of a commitment, but it's certainly a worthwhile endeavor, right? You're helping your community, you're helping the people who are in need.
Mm-hmm.
And do you find that members of the board feel it's like a satisfying, way to help the community?
I think so. I think that that's why they're on the board, because they have this sense of what a strong community looks like and what can be done to make sure that the community is always trying to be in a healthy position.
Well, if you had 10 seconds, which we do, to give us one last thought or anything that you could leave for anybody today, what would it be?
Oh, goodness. 10 seconds? I would say help the No Freeze, because we need your help, and come and volunteer if you want, or make a donation. It doesn't have to be monetary. It could be supplies needed or something like that. Whatever you can do.
Great. Avery, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, this is 91.7 FM WHUS, the Yukon radio station. I'm the Reverend Brian Blair, and you've been listening to Crossroads.
length